Sometimes the heart stirs when we least expect it. It doesn't care about age, about timing, or about the unspoken rules we've set to protect ourselves. This is the story of a man, a father, who had long tucked away his heart behind responsibilities and regret, until his son's friend walked into his life, and everything changed. The soft hum of cicadas filled the warm, late summer evening as Mark Daniels eased himself into the recliner by the window. His modest two-story home in the quiet suburbs of Mulberry Lane had been unusually quiet since his divorce 5 years ago, and even quieter now that his son, Jason, was back in college. Mark, 42, lived a structured life. Up at 6, jog at 7, carpentry gigs during the day, and back home by 5 to cook and unwind with a glass of wine. It was predictable, even lonely, but safe. Safe from the messiness of feelings, from questions he hadn't dared ask himself since his 20s, questions about who he really was, deep down. The doorbell rang, breaking the silence. He frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened the door, a tall, broad-shouldered young man stood on the porch, smiling with an awkward hand behind his head. "Hey, Mr. Daniels. Sorry to just show up. It's Ryan Carter, Jason's roommate." Mark blinked in surprise. "Ryan? Oh, right. From UCLA? Yeah, I know Jason's out of town, but I just flew in a day early. He said I could crash here. My dorm's not ready yet." Jason had mentioned something vaguely about his friend visiting early, but Mark hadn't paid much attention. He stepped aside, gesturing Ryan in. "Sure, come on in. Guest room's made up. You hungry?" Ryan chuckled. "I wouldn't say no." Mark stood in the kitchen, chopping garlic, while Ryan leaned casually against the island, watching him. There was something intense in Ryan's gaze. Not inappropriate, just curious, appreciative. "You cook a lot?" Ryan asked. "Every day," Mark replied. "It keeps me sane." Ryan smirked. "Better than ramen and protein shakes." They ate spaghetti with homemade meat sauce in the dining room, surrounded by warm yellow light and the scent of rosemary. Ryan talked animatedly about school, music, his love of photography. Mark listened, genuinely interested, smiling more than he had in months. "I can't believe Jason never mentioned you were into woodwork," Ryan said, running a hand along the smooth surface of the dining table Mark had made years ago. "This is incredible." Mark shrugged. "Just a hobby turned profession. You ever think about teaching it?" He paused. No one had asked him that before. "Maybe," he said quietly. Later that night, Mark lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan. The house wasn't so quiet anymore. It pulsed with a strange new energy. Something about Ryan, his confidence, his kindness, his sheer presence, had stirred something Mark hadn't felt in years. And that scared him. Because Ryan was young. Because he was his son's friend. Because even if Mark had questioned his feelings in the past, he had never acted on them. He rolled over and tried to sleep, ignoring the flutter in his chest. The next day passed in a blur of household chores and small talk. Ryan helped him restain the deck. They laughed when Mark spilled varnish on his jeans. At one point, Mark caught Ryan staring at him, not in the way friends did, but in a way that made Mark's breath catch. "You okay?" Ryan asked softly. Mark nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just tired." Ryan said nothing, but his eyes lingered a moment longer than they should have. That evening, after a movie, Mark turned in early. The wine made him drowsy. He stripped off his shirt, slipped under the covers, and let the darkness swallow him. At some point in the night, the door creaked open. He stirred, half dreaming. Footsteps patted across the carpet. Then, click, the door latched shut. "Mark," a whisper. He sat up, disoriented, heart racing. Ryan stood by the door, shirtless, his face lit only by moonlight pouring through the blinds. "I couldn't sleep," Ryan said, voice low. "I kept thinking." Mark's mouth went dry. "Ryan, what are you doing?" Ryan took a step closer. "Don't tell me you haven't felt it too." Mark's breath caught in his throat. "I don't know what you're talking about." But he did. He knew exactly what Ryan meant. He felt it in every heartbeat, in every lingering glance, in the way the silence between them had changed. Ryan moved closer. Tell me to leave, he said gently. I will. But if you don't, Mark's voice broke. You're Jason's friend. It's not right. But it feels real, Ryan whispered. Doesn't it? Mark didn't answer. Ryan reached out, brushing Mark's shoulder with warm fingertips. Then let me stay. Just for a while. Nothing else. I just want to be close to you. Mark's resolve was breaking, but he nodded slowly. Ryan slipped under the covers beside him, careful, respectful. He didn't try to touch more than Mark allowed. They lay side by side, silent, hearts pounding. Nothing happened, but everything changed. For the first time in years, Mark felt seen and terrifyingly alive. The morning light painted soft streaks across the bedroom wall when Mark opened his eyes. For a moment, he forgot. Then he turned his head, and there was Ryan, still asleep beside him. Peaceful, vulnerable. Younger, yes, but not naive. His chest rose and fell in a slow, steady rhythm, and the edge of a small tattoo peeked out from under the blanket near his shoulder. A crescent moon, fitting. Everything about last night had felt like a dream. Mark sat up quietly, brushing a hand through his graying hair. What the hell was he doing? He slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Ryan, and padded downstairs barefoot. The kitchen was dim. He set the coffee pot to brew and leaned against the counter, trying to slow his thoughts. It wasn't just about age, or timing, or Jason. It was about him, finally confronting something he'd buried for decades, something he didn't dare name. When Ryan entered a few minutes later, wearing only a worn t-shirt and boxers, the air shifted again. Morning, Ryan said softly, watching him. Mark didn't respond at first. Then, you shouldn't have come into my room last night. Ryan walked to the counter and leaned across from him. I know. Silence stretched between them like a tightrope. But I don't regret it, Ryan added. Mark looked at him, trying to read between the lines. Sincerity, youth, desire, confusion. I'm not a game, Ryan. I'm not some midlife fantasy you explore before going back to your dorm and your real life. Ryan flinched. That's not fair, isn't it? I didn't come here to mess with you. I came because, he hesitated, because I've felt something since the moment I met you. At first, I didn't know what it was. I liked being around you, the way you talk, the way you carry yourself. You're real and strong, and a little sad, if I'm honest. Mark looked away. Ryan stepped closer. And yeah, maybe it's complicated, but that doesn't make it a lie. Mark shook his head, struggling. You're 22. I'm 24, actually, just turned. That's still, I'm not asking you to be my boyfriend. I'm not even asking you for anything, Mark. I just wanted you to know how I feel. Ryan's eyes were calm, steady, mature beyond what Mark expected. I'll move out today if you want, he added. No pressure, no drama. Mark didn't answer. He just stood there, a storm behind his eyes, coffee forgotten. Later, Ryan packed up his backpack and sat on the porch steps, scrolling through his phone, waiting for a rideshare. Mark watched him from inside, torn between guilt and something deeper. Longing. Just as Ryan stood up to leave, Mark opened the front door. Wait. Ryan turned, his eyes guarded now. You don't have to go, Mark said. Ryan raised an eyebrow. But we need to set boundaries, Mark continued, voice trembling slightly. This is my house and I need time. Ryan nodded slowly. I can respect that. And I need you to know, Mark added, I haven't done this before. Any of this. I've never. I know, Ryan said gently. You don't have to say it. The next few days passed with an unspoken truce between them. They cooked dinner together. Ryan helped Mark organize the garage. They watched old movies and sat on opposite ends of the couch, saying little but feeling much. One night, Mark found an old photo album buried in the attic. He brought it downstairs, dusting it off. Ryan flipped through the pages, smiling at pictures of Mark in his 20s. Young, lean, with sun-bleached hair, and a quiet intensity in his eyes. You were beautiful, Ryan said without looking up. Mark blushed, laughing softly. Was? Ryan glanced at him, serious. Still are. Something shifted in that moment, the honesty between them becoming undeniable. Mark's heart ached and bloomed all at once. What is this, really? A late-blooming revelation? Or am I just grasping at something to feel alive again? He looks at me like I'm someone worth knowing. But what if I'm not ready for that truth? One evening, a thunderstorm rolled in. Rain lashed the windows and thunder shook the walls. They sat by the fireplace, sipping red wine, the tension between them thick and alive. Ryan's foot brushed against Mark's. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," Ryan said suddenly. Mark looked into the fire. I wanted to be an artist once. A painter." Ryan smiled. "You still can be." "I let it go a long time ago. Life happened." Ryan leaned in slightly. "It's not too late." Mark looked at him. Really looked. His face lit by the fire, his eyes sincere. Then Ryan reached out, gently took Mark's hand in his. It was the first time they'd touched in days. Mark didn't pull away. "I'm scared," Mark admitted. "Me too," Ryan whispered, "but not of you." That night, they didn't sleep in separate rooms. They lay together in the dark again, fully clothed, fully present. Ryan rested his head on Mark's chest, listening to his heartbeat. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. It wasn't sex. It wasn't lust. It was intimacy, trust, the beginning of something new, and terrifyingly real. It had been a week since that stormy night by the fireplace. The night Mark let Ryan rest against his chest. The night silence spoke louder than words. In the days that followed, something shifted between them. They were careful, yes, but closer, more aware of each other. There was a quiet electricity in the air, not rushed or reckless, but tender, almost sacred. Each morning they brewed coffee together. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they didn't. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was understood. But tension doesn't just vanish. It lingers in the corners of the room, waiting for the moment someone dares to speak the truth. One afternoon, Mark returned from a carpentry job to find Ryan in the backyard, shirt off, camera slung around his neck, barefoot in the grass. He was taking pictures of the old oak tree near the fence line, sunlight filtering through the branches and hitting his skin like gold. Mark stood by the back door watching. He didn't mean to stare, but the sight hit him like a wave. Not just the way Ryan looked, but the way he existed. Unafraid, fully present, effortlessly beautiful. When Ryan turned and saw him, he smiled, but there was something different in it, something contemplative. "You ever really look at this place?" Ryan asked, walking toward him. "It's like time moves slower here." Mark smiled faintly. "It does, that's the point." Ryan looked up at the house, then back at Mark. "It's peaceful, but a little lonely too." Mark didn't reply. "I used to think I wanted to live in the city forever," Ryan continued, "but now I'm not so sure. You're young. You've got time to figure it out." Ryan nodded, but his eyes stayed on Mark. "What about you? Do you ever think about starting over?" Mark looked at the oak tree, then the sky, then Ryan. "Every day," he said softly. That evening, as they ate dinner on the porch, the mood was different, charged but quiet, like they were both dancing around something unspoken. Ryan poured them each a glass of wine. "You ever miss being in love?" Mark hesitated. "I'm not sure I ever really was. Not the way people talk about it." Ryan leaned back, swirling his glass. "I think love shows up in ways we don't expect. Sometimes it's not loud. Sometimes it just sneaks in through the cracks." Mark looked at him, heart thudding. "What are we doing, Ryan?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Ryan's eyes didn't flinch. "Whatever this is, it's real. You feel it too. I know you do." Mark swallowed. "It can't last." "Why not?" "Because of Jason. Because of the age gap. Because I don't know what I'm doing." Ryan reached across the table, covering Mark's hand with his own. "You don't have to know," he said. "You just have to be honest." He stood at his wedding, suit pressed, smile painted on. Not fake, just muted. He loved his wife, or he thought he did, but even then, there was something missing. A hunger for something deeper, a truth he couldn't name, something he buried in the rhythm of fatherhood and work and years that slipped past like rain on glass. That night, Mark sat alone in the living room, the house quiet except for the ticking of the old wall clock. Ryan had gone to bed early. The temptation to retreat was strong, to draw back into himself, pretend nothing was happening. But something stronger pulled at him now. He climbed the stairs, paused at Ryan's door, and knocked gently. "It's open," came Ryan's voice. Mark stepped inside. Ryan was sitting on the bed reading. He put the book down, sensing the weight of Mark's presence. Mark stood there for a moment, uncertain. Then he spoke. "When I was 20, I met someone, a guy. He was just a friend. Nothing ever happened, but I thought about it." For years, Ryan didn't interrupt. "I buried it because I got married, because it was easier, but I was never really whole." Mark took a breath. "You make me feel like I could be, like I could still have something I thought I'd missed out on forever." Ryan stood slowly, walked to him. "You haven't missed it, Mark. You're just starting." Mark looked at him, his guard finally crumbling. "I'm scared." Ryan stepped closer. "So am I." They didn't kiss. Not yet. It wasn't time. But Mark pulled Ryan into a slow, tight embrace, one that said everything he hadn't known how to say until now. In Ryan's arms, Mark felt the strangest thing. Hope. He thinks this is just a moment, but I know what it is. It's not about saving him. It's about meeting him where he is and showing him it's okay to be seen. They stayed like that until the silence became breath, and the breath became a quiet kind of comfort. That night, they didn't lie side by side. Mark fell asleep with his head on Ryan's shoulder, like the world had finally quieted, down enough to let him rest. For the first time in his adult life, he didn't feel like he had to pretend. He just felt alive. The sun was low in the sky, casting a soft amber glow across the living room when the knock came. Mark glanced up from the kitchen, hands still damp from washing dishes. Ryan was in the den editing photos, earbuds in, lost in his own world. Mark opened the door and froze. It was Jason. His son stood on the porch with a backpack slung over his shoulder, his usual easy grin replaced with something tighter, warier. "Surprise," Jason said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Mark's mind scrambled. "I didn't know you were coming home." "Yeah, I figured I'd just swing by for the weekend. Thought I'd check in on you. I texted Ryan too, but I guess he didn't mention it." Mark's stomach sank. In the other room, Ryan's voice drifted in softly, humming along with whatever was playing in his headphones. Jason's eyes followed the sound. "He's here," Mark nodded, trying to keep his expression neutral. "Didn't know you two were hanging out that much," Jason said casually, but his tone had a sharp edge to it. Mark forced a smile. He needed a place to stay while sorting out some stuff. It was just a favor. Jason dropped his bag on the floor. "Okay." Just then, Ryan emerged from the den, earbuds out, hair slightly tousled, wearing one of Mark's old hoodies. Jason's eyes narrowed slightly. Ryan froze mid-step. "Hey, man, I didn't know you were coming today." Apparently. Ryan tried to smile, but the tension in the room was thick. "Good to see you." "Yeah," Jason said, his gaze drifting between the two of them. "You two seem cozy." That night was heavy with unspoken things. Dinner was awkward. Jason asking clipped questions, Mark keeping conversation light, Ryan staying mostly silent. Afterward, Mark retreated to his room while Ryan went out back, claiming he needed air. Jason stayed up, nursing a beer in the kitchen, brows furrowed like he was trying to solve a riddle he didn't want to admit existed. Later, Mark found Ryan sitting under the old oak tree, arms wrapped around his knees. "You okay?" Mark asked softly. Ryan nodded but didn't look up. "I should go. Tomorrow, maybe." Mark's heart ached. "Don't do that." He knows something's off. "We haven't done anything wrong." Ryan turned to face him. "That won't matter. Not to him." Mark sat beside him, the grass damp and cool beneath them. "I don't want to lose him." Ryan nodded. "And I don't want to be the reason you do." They sat in silence, listening to the night wind rustling through the leaves. "I've spent most of my life doing the safe thing," Mark whispered. even when it hurt, even when it wasn't me. But being around you, he shook his head, eyes glassy. It makes me feel like I'm finally breathing. Ryan reached for his hand in the dark. Then keep breathing. He watched his dad from the stairs. Strong, steady, always tired. Mark never dated after the divorce. Never brought anyone home. Always told Jason, "I'm focusing on you right now." Jason believed him. But he also wondered why his dad always looked like he was carrying something too heavy for one person. The next morning, Jason caught Mark outside on the porch. "I want to ask you something," Jason said, arms crossed. Mark braced himself. "Okay. Are you and Ryan—" Mark hesitated. Jason exhaled. "I'm not stupid, Dad. I saw the way you looked at him, the way he looked at you." Mark's jaw tightened. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." Mark sighed. "It's complicated. I didn't plan for this. I didn't look for it. But he's been here. And we've been talking. A lot. And somewhere along the way I realized that you're into him." Mark looked Jason in the eye. "That I might have always been into men. I just didn't know how to admit it." Jason was quiet for a long moment. "So, all these years you were lying? To yourself? To Mom? To me?" "Number I was surviving," Mark said, voice firm but soft. "I didn't know what I needed until recently." Jason looked away, jaw tense. "You're my dad, and he's my friend." "I know. It feels wrong. I get that." Jason met his eyes again. "But it's not my life. It's yours. I just need time, okay?" Mark stepped forward, heart in his throat. "Take all the time you need." Inside, Ryan was packing his things when Jason entered the guest room. "You leaving?" Jason asked. Ryan nodded, not meeting his gaze. "I thought maybe it was best." Jason leaned against the doorframe. "You really care about him?" Ryan looked up. "Yeah, I do." Jason studied him for a long second. "He deserves to be happy. Just don't hurt him." "I won't." Jason nodded once, then turned and walked away. Ryan sat on the bed, exhaling deeply, equal parts relief and heartache. That night after Jason left for the city, Mark and Ryan sat on the couch, the house still and quiet again. "You don't have to leave," Mark said. "I don't want to," Ryan whispered. Mark pulled him close, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "I think we can do this," he said, voice low. Ryan leaned into him, the warmth of his body grounding them both. "Together?" Mark smiled softly. "Yeah, together. For the first time in my life, I am choosing love over fear. Not the safe kind, the real kind. The kind that scares you because it's honest. The kind that finds you at your most unguarded and stays." It had been 3 weeks since Jason left. 3 weeks since Ryan almost walked away, and Mark almost let him. But something had changed in the quiet after that storm. Not just between them, but inside them. A mutual decision was made, even if it hadn't been spoken. They would no longer live their lives half awake. Mark still woke early, but now there was warmth behind him in the bed, a body breathing steady, a hand curled gently against his chest. Ryan slept like someone who finally felt safe, as if this man, this house, this moment was his shelter. And maybe Mark realized it was. One morning, Mark watched Ryan walk barefoot into the kitchen, hoodie sleeves too long, hair sticking up. He looked like he belonged, not like a guest, not like a secret, but like a chapter that was always meant to be written. "You want coffee?" Mark asked. Ryan nodded, rubbing his eyes. "Only if you're making it." Mark smiled. "You trust me that much?" Ryan walked closer, slid his arms around Mark's waist from behind. "With some things, not with making pancakes, though." Mark chuckled, leaning back into the embrace. "Fair." It was so simple, so soft, so real. They walked side by side, hands almost brushing but not quite touching, a habit left over from years of self-censorship. But when they passed the flower stall, Mark reached over and gently took Ryan's hand. Ryan looked at him, eyes wide. Mark didn't let go. They bought tomatoes, cheese, and fresh basil, talked about dinner, about weather, about maybe taking a trip. Just the two of them. They didn't talk about fear, because for once, it wasn't louder than love. They sat on the back porch, wine glasses on the railing, stars like pinholes in the sky. Mark spoke first. I spent most of my life looking over my shoulder, worried what people would think, trying to be who I thought I had to be. Ryan looked at him gently. And now? Mark turned to him. Now, I just want to be someone who tells the truth, especially to you. Ryan sat quietly, heart thudding. I love you, Mark said, the words shaking as they fell from his mouth. Not just because of what you make me feel, but because of how you see me, and how I've started to see myself through you. Ryan's throat tightened. You don't have to say it back, Mark added quickly, almost nervously. But Ryan didn't let him finish. I love you too. Mark blinked. Ryan's voice had been sure, grounded. I didn't know what this was when I first got here, Ryan said, his voice breaking slightly. I just needed space, a reset. I thought maybe I was running from something, but maybe I was running to something. To me, Mark asked, barely believing. To us, Ryan said, even if we took the long way here. They kissed finally. Soft, unhurried, warm. The kind of kiss that didn't ask permission anymore. Jason returned the following weekend. This time, Mark didn't flinch when Ryan opened the door. They'd talked, set their foundation, and they were ready for whatever came next. Jason walked in, saw them sitting at the table together. Ryan's hand resting lightly on Mark's wrist, and for a moment, he said nothing. Then, I brought those tools you needed, he said, dropping a duffel by the door. Mark stood, walked toward his son. You didn't have to. I know, Jason cut in, but I wanted to. They looked at each other for a moment. Then Jason reached out and pulled his dad into a quick, rough hug. I'm figuring it out, Jason murmured. But I'm not mad anymore. Mark's eyes stung. That's more than I deserve. Jason pulled back. No, it's not. Then to Ryan, you better not screw this up. Ryan smiled faintly. Not planning on it. Ryan got a job offer. A local gallery wanted to exhibit his photos, and there was a part-time teaching position opening up at a nearby college. Mark encouraged him to take it. They built a small studio in the garage together. Ryan took photos. Mark crafted frames. They sold them at local markets, made slow dinners, and learned to live in the rhythm of each other's lives. And each night they fell asleep, not afraid of what tomorrow might bring, but excited by it. Snow fell outside the windows. The fire crackled in the hearth. Ryan sat curled beside Mark on the couch, a blanket pulled over them both. I still think about that first night, Ryan whispered. The night you walked in and locked the door? Mark smirked. Ryan grinned. That one. I thought I was dreaming. You were, Ryan said, laying his head on Mark's shoulder. You just didn't know it yet. Mark pressed a kiss to Ryan's hair, his voice soft. Well, if this is a dream, I'm never waking up. Outside, the world turned quietly to white. Inside, they stayed warm. Hearts unlocked, doors wide open. In a world where so many love stories are rushed, missed, or left unspoken, this one was different. This one found its way. Not despite the years, but because of them. Love, when it finally arrived, did not knock. It walked in, gently, and locked the door behind it.